Hello everyone, and welcome to Katharine's Creatures. This is a series where I get to touch base upon and talk a little bit about various mythological creatures, beast beings, and the like pulled from lore worldwide, and this is episode 120. I always like to preface by saying that I am not a linguist, so if I mispronounce anything along the way, I do apologize in advance. I try my best, I really do. Now, with that said, I wanted to talk about the Strzyga, and if this sounds familiar to some of you, especially all you Witcher fans, you are correct, because in that book series, The Witcher, the author really loves incorporating Slavic myth and mythology and folklore in his works. And so because of that, and the recent popularity of The Witcher, both books and show, as well as video games, the creature entity Strzyga is becoming more familiarized. Now I'm going to be talking about what this entity is based on the, again, original Slavic myth. And in that myth, it's kind of viewed as multiple things. A female demon. Sometimes people associate a little bit closer to a witch or some female that's has ability to utilize magic for her own purposes, or some sort of female vampire-like entity. And we'll get to all that in just a moment. But the word Strzyga actually comes from an earlier word, strix, from ancient Rome. And strix in Rome was believed to be one of two things, either a bird of bad omen or a witch. And over the years, no one really, I don't think too many people really know how that word came from Rome and evolved to what it is in this particular mythos. But now Strzyga is this kind of terrifying entity, and her myth is pretty dark. We'll get to some of that also momentarily. But as I said, vampire, witch, or female demon, she is not a good thing. And there are different kind of vampires in Slavic myth. I do want to make note of that. And they have their own name as well, and that's Uperior. Hopefully I got that even close to being right. So there are vampires in Slavic myth. It's just Strzyga sometimes also kind of overlaps that type of entity in its own way, though Strzyga being a little bit more thought of as the witchcraft side versus the true vampire side. But anywho, now I diverge. Okay, getting back to the point. So, sorry, back to the point. People believed, okay, lost my train of thought. But the origin of Strzyga, there's a number of them. Now, it is believed that the Strzyga is a person who is born with two hearts and two souls, and more often than not, two sets of teeth, one being a little bit smaller and thus harder to be very notable. Other people say that Strzygas, when they are born, have the inability to grow armpit hair. So if you're a person who has that, and certain people actually do genetically have that inability to grow armpit hair, they would have been suspected as being a Strzyga. Another origin kind of story is, and it's kind of terrifying, that during the epidemics that periodically occurred in the area, people who were ill were buried alive. And if the person buried alive had the strength and willpower to dig themselves out, they were also viewed as being a Strzyga because they emerged being weak and ill and sickly and, having these mangled hands from, digging themselves free. But those also could be assumed or presumed to be a Strzyga. And if you're identified as a Strzyga, most people would chase you out of town. That's the nice way to do it, at least. And it was also believed that Strzygas actually died at a young age. So again, going back to the two souls. So Strzygas died at a young age, and one soul would go to the afterlife. And the other soul would be kind of trapped in that physical body and kind of become alive yet again. An unliving, undead thing. And that's when the Strzyga starts becoming, essentially mutating into this evil property, the soul that's stuck in the physical body. So even though they died early, one part of the two parts is still alive and will come after people. It is also believed that Strzygas can have the ability to fly about at night in the form of an eagle and attack travelers along their way. do this because they like to suck the blood and consume the entrails of their victims. Yet, it is also noted that the blood of animals can sustain them for short periods of time, so they don't necessarily have to just hunt humans. Though humans, I guess they are a little bit more nutritious for them because they prefer humans to animal blood. But there you go. Some other kind of interesting facts about it is that some subsect believe that instead of being more vampire-like, the Strzyga is a little bit more akin to a banshee, this kind of herald of death, that the Strzyga itself would not hunt people, but seeing one or coming across the path of one would mean that you or someone you know would die in the near future. So these heralds of death. Now, there are a lot of different horrific ways to either fend off or destroy a Strzyga, including, but not limited to, decapitation, where if you remove the head, you bury it separately, and they would place a sickle around the head for protective purposes, and that should usually end the Strzyga and they are gone. Other things people did would put nails in the corpse, burn the body, put flint or other kind of items like that in the mouth. They also believe that the tolling of church bells would dissuade it, and for some reason burying them outside of the village would often kind of help prevent the Strzyga from finding you and returning. There's also lore that's a little more on the fae side, where you could sprinkle poppy seeds, particularly in a sign of a cross on the ground around your house, and that would help prevent the Strzyga from entering and causing problems, as well as exhumation with a priest around. That was one of the another ones. And the last one I guess I'll mention is, again, kind of going with the fae and the counting of small items, is they would actually bury a bunch of small items. It doesn't really matter, but just a lot of small items in the grave of what you would presume to be a Strzyga, and in the idea that when the Strzyga awakes at night, they're forced to count the small items until the day comes, and then they go back to sleep. And so it kind of keeps them in their grave for eternity. Interesting stuff. So that's kind of the mythos I have on the Strzyga. If you know more about it, or if you have any questions about this or anything else, please post them in the comments below or reach out to me on any of my social media. And until next time, everyone, skål.